All right,
We're back.
guys, we're here. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Britt, this is Jay, and we are the hosts of Talking Talent. We're coming to you live from Melbourne. It is very early and it's very cold, but we wanted to make sure that this time slot was suitable for our friends in the US. So, just a quick hi, James. A little bit of context of what Talking Talent is all about if you haven't joined us at one of these sessions yet. We launched this earlier this year with the intentions to create a platform for talent practitioners to share their experiences and their strategies. We've got the next 3 months, I think, already locked in. So, yeah, have some really great talent attractors to bring to you all, and hopefully we'll see you on those sessions too. Little bit of housekeeping just for today. If you can make sure that you can use the chat function to the right of the screen, maybe even drop in your most recently used emoji. I think James has put one in there too. Yep, great. Just to make sure that you can ask questions throughout the session, because we will be giving a little prize away to the best question of the day. These are our new kick into gear little video kits that have branded socks and lots of gadgets to help you create videos professionally from anywhere with ease. So, enough about that. Let's talk about how honoured we are to have Mr. James Ellis here with us today, the employer branding nerd himself. I'm going to skip the bio, James's bio, just because if you've shown up today, I assume you know who James is. And if you don't know who James is, you're going to get a really strong feel for what he's all about in the next hour. So, James, welcome to this virtual stage.
Hey everybody, aside from technical glitches, I am super pumped to be able to do this. This is fantastic. Looking forward to this for a while.
Awesome. Great. So, James, we're going to talk about two, I guess, kind of core topics today that we know you are really passionate about. The first one is around remaining honest and authentic in your employer branding strategy and focusing on what candidates actually care about. And the second is to, I guess, help us set the record straight about employer brand communication and the actual delivery of that. So
Great.
two kind of juicy topics to jump into, but
I'm glad you think they're juicy. Most people don't think of these as juicy topics. This is usually like, oh, we're going to be subjected to this. Oh no. Yeah, we're going to make it juicy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, great. Juicy. But maybe let's just start with a quick little icebreaker. James, what is your biggest pet peeve about employer branding right now?
I'm a surly, cynical, bitter, black-hearted individual. I know myself. That's just how I am. It's just how it is. So I have many pet peeves, but I'll just stick with this. Employer brand professionals who just assume it's recruiting with some creative on top, who just assume it's really easy to do. It's something that failed recruiters do or something that bored marketers do. There's an assumption that it's really easy stuff. It's just making job postings look nice. And it's not. It's a lot of really interesting, really engaging, thought-provoking stuff, which is why I love it. But I think there's a good chunk of the industry that still thinks it's just making things look pretty. And it's not.
Good one. All right, let's jump in. So, James, we've heard you say before that great employer branding is about being honest. So are you saying that, I guess, some employer brand folk out there aren't being honest?
Of course.
And why do you think that is?
Of course they're not being honest. Look, the entire history of recruiting and hiring has been, hey, I'm a company, I have a job. It's like having a pork chop and you're dangling it in front of the puppies. And the puppy's like, I want the job. I want the job. And they want it so bad and they'll do anything they have to do. They're desperate. They're salivating. They need that pork chop. And the company goes, well, then jump through my hoops. Do what I want. I don't care. I want you to put your entire life into 2 pages. Let's call it a resume. You're going to format it exactly this way. You're going to submit it exactly this way. You're going to jump through these hoops of the ATS. You're going to sit tight, you're going to sit on your hands until we call you, and then we'll say, are you available for a screening call? And you better be, and you're going to get dressed up. They make all the rules, and they've had that authority and that power for so long. And then in the last, let's call it 10 years, let's be gentle, the pendulum went and swung all the other way. And now it's about, if talent is really good at what they do, they have this thing called, let me see if I don't know if it means the same thing in Australia as it does in America. It's this magical thing called choice, that the talent gets to choose where they want to work. They can go lots of places. And in a world where everybody can work anywhere, I can work in Australia remotely. You could work in Chicago if you wanted remotely. You can work anywhere. You have choice. Well, suddenly businesses are like, oh, Oh, these people that we've treated like wage slaves for so very long, now they get to choose and now they have all this power. Oh, let's just throw nice things at them, right? They look at the marketing team and they say, how do you sell a widget? How do you sell a candy bar? How do you sell some jelly beans? And they go, make it look good. And they say, great, got it, done. I'm going to make really pretty videos and everybody's smiling. And I'm going to get a bunch of stock photography and make everybody really look serious and businessy, right? They're going to make these things really pretty and really simple and really boring and not even remotely true, right? Every company that ever uses stock art for their career site, I just want to kind of slap them around and says, that's literally not a picture of your company. You're misrepresenting yours. That's called lying. Stop lying. There's so much lying happening here. What are you doing? It's a lie. That's just the beginning of it. I mean, honestly, you could go to a job posting and say, I mean, I'm not going to shame anybody yet, but I know that all of us here on this call have at one point or another run into a job posting or a job ad where it was clear that a couple of those bullets were stolen from another job posting or another company. And to which you say, how can you be describing your company and your job using some other company's description? That's called, again, lying. That's all lying is, because we think all we got to do is put on the rose-colored glasses, make everything look great, and these people called talent, whatever they are, will eventually apply, and that's what it is. And that's not what it's about. It's so not what it's about, right? There are I don't know. In the U.S., we have a big investment company called Goldman Sachs. You've probably heard of it. It's huge. It's massive. It's they're funding all these things. There's a huge article that came out in the winter about how their junior analysts were working 100, 110, 120 hours a week. They weren't going home. They were showering in the communal bathrooms, right? They were working themselves to death. And everybody in the employer brand field went, "Oh no, that's so horrible for Goldman Sachs employer brand." And I said, "No, it's not." Every person who complained in that article knew exactly what this job was. They were not surprised by 110 hours a week. They are not surprised by the level and the work they have to do to make this happen, right? What they did is they talked to the recruiter, and they talked to the interviewer, and they talked to the hiring manager, and the conversation was very simple. If you, talented person, give us your 20s and 30s, you will walk away a millionaire. You will never see the inside of the coach cabin on the airplane ever again. You can pretend it doesn't even exist, that cattle call back there. It's just money everywhere you go. And somebody goes, I want that. Give me that. I want that. You can take all my 20s. I don't care. You work me to death. What do I care? So long as there's a big old pile of cash at the end of it. It's an exchange. It's a value exchange. In fact, it's a value proposition. If you work here, we give you all this money, but in exchange, we want all this stuff. Tesla just came out with this big thing about how you'll never work remote. You can't work remote. The value exchange is, if you want to say you work at Tesla, you have to be in the office and you have to kind of grind it out. You have to work minimum 40 hours a week, right? There's all this stuff. It's a value proposition. Now, do I want to work at Goldman Sachs and Tesla? No. But there are people who do. There are people for whom that is a dream job. And they only can know it's a dream job if the company is authentic. If they say, hey, we're going to work you to death. You ready? Here's what you get. They have to be honest. Because if you say it's a wonderful place, it's puppy dogs and daisies, it's blue skies every morning, it's bagels and coffee every morning for free, and you're home by 5:30 at Goldman Sachs, and you show up and you go, wait, this wasn't what I promised. That's called lying, right? So it's all about saying, look, every company has a value they offer. Sometimes it's a paycheck. Sometimes it's a sense of satisfaction. Sometimes it's a community. Sometimes it's a mission of saving the world. Sometimes it's just, hey, we're going to give you the authority and the power to make decisions. That's what we're giving you. And in exchange, you, who wants that thing, can show up and give it to us, and we will exchange that. Authenticity says that kind of matching gets to happen. It's companies who lie, that never happens. They hire people saying it's a wonderful place to work, and they show up and say, okay, I'm ready to work in this wonderful place. You're like, oh, it's like this? Oh, I was lied to. It was misrepresented. What are you talking about? And they immediately leave. So when you look at, rating sites giving bad reviews, or you see people leaving after 2 months, it's not that they're surprised. It's not just that they were surprised that the work was like this, is that it was misrepresented. They were lied to.
So don't lie. Let's talk about I guess, candidates' ability to see through the BS, and like you said, perhaps know that you're using stock imagery on your career site and everything. What, I guess, What do candidates really care about these days, and how do they actually want to learn about a company's honest employer brand?
Yeah. First off, there's a couple pieces to that. The first is, look, you are a smidge younger than I am, but we have all been raised to smell the bullshit that is marketing from a mile away. We can be, scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, and we know the difference between the picture of our friend's kid and the ad for that thing we never thought we wanted. We can smell it, even if they're trying to trick us to make it look like a picture of our friend's kid, which is creepy, but whatever. You still immediately go, "That's something's wrong there. That's an ad." We've all been trained to know the difference between ad and not an ad. So that's how we can sniff it out. And I think there's a whole lot of conversation around what does this generation want. I'm a Gen Xer, right? I'm fully fledged. I was in college when Nirvana came out. I am older than the hills. I'm not going to guess how young you are. I'm not even going to pretend to get myself in that kind of trouble. I have some thoughts about it, but that's fine. Everybody, the generation says, oh, this generation wants this and this generation wants that. It's not really true. All the generational stuff is a function of, as you entered the workforce, what was the context, right? Like, I have friends whose parents lived through the Great Depression and they hoard food. Like, there's always food in the closet. Why? Because they went through a time when they were hungry and it scarred them kind of emotionally. So now they always have food. They're always giving food away. You walk into their house, do you want a pie, right? It's whatever you want. Just, do you want some food? People who walked into the workforce of 2008 have their own scars. And so consequently, they want something different than the people who walked in 2000 or 1999, when the world was all sunshine and rainbows, and we're all going to get rich on Yahoo stock. Remember Yahoo? I know, right? Anyway, it's a whole different world. You're walking into a different context. So there is some generational difference of, this generation wants this because they walked into this context. But I'll tell you this, in the end, people are people. And every generation has people who want to be rich, and every generation has people who want to save the world. My father's generation, they're hippies, legitimately hippies, and they were also the people who made boomers, right? They made the millionaires of the stock market in the 80s, right? They had the same desires. Every generation has those things. So I'd like to kind of pull away from that sense of, oh, this generation wants this. The data says that they do, but like in tiny amounts. In the end, people are still people. So what people care about is what people have always cared about. And if you go back to psychology, if you look at, there's plenty of people who have done really interesting studies about what motivates people. And it really breaks down to about, depending on the studies, 8 or 9 motivations. People want stability. They want to feel like they're part of something. They want to feel like they're part of a bigger mission. They want to feel like they're getting a reward. They want to feel like they're getting status. They want to have some power. They want to have some autonomy. They want to have some innovation. There's only about 8 things. Okay, every generation, everyone wants some of that, and every part of every generation wants a piece of that. And so what I like to say is, in the end, what your company rewards will attract the people who want that reward. So Goldman Sachs is not attracting hippies. They're not attracting people who want to save the whales and save the earth. No one should go to Goldman Sachs for that. That's not what Goldman Sachs is for. And I'm going to beat up on Goldman Sachs. Why? Because they could buy me and sell me all day long. So it's safe. It's completely fair. No one goes to Goldman Sachs to save the world, but no one goes to the World Wildlife Federation to make money. So if you understand what you offer and what you reward, you attract people if you're authentic about that. So Goldman Sachs says, yeah, we're going to work you to death, but you'll be a millionaire. There's a line out the door for people who say, yes, please, I want me some of that. And World Wildlife Federation and ACLU and all sorts of nonprofits say, you're not going to make a lot of money, but you might make a dent and make the world a little better. And there's a line of people who want to work there too. There's a line of people who want to work at the post office, for goodness sake, right? Nobody on this call went, oh yeah, good, the postal service. Yes, what a wonderful place to work. But there are people for whom that is their dream job, because at 5 o'clock they get to stop working. There's no overtime. It's a very regimented system. So if you are accurate and authentic about what you reward, you will attract the people who want that thing. And it kind of get away from that, oh, it's all millennials want is X, Y, and Z, so let's give it to them. It's not authentic. It's not who you are. It's not what your company is all about. That becomes kind of a whitewash situation where you're saying you care about these things, but you really don't. And like, for example, you're a company that cares about individual achievement, right? And that means it's a very competitive atmosphere, whether it's a sales floor or doesn't really matter. You're just all about individual achievement. And you start to tell the world, hey, we're all about working together. And people say, great, I like to work, with a great team, and we're all on the same team, and we're all working for that shared goal. Great. They show up, and the reward system is based on who sold the most, you get the bonus. Who sold the most, you get promoted. You go, oh, what you're rewarding is not what I care about. And ultimately, what a company rewards is who they are. And they need to be crystal clear about that so we can avoid conversation of how do we put on this little kabuki theater that we care about the earth when we don't, or we care about, whatever it is when we don't. That's really what it's about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll go to some questions. So I've got one more follow-up question, James, and then we've got a couple of questions coming through from the chat on a few different topics. So, just one follow-up there around that, getting to that kind of brutal honesty and telling the story in a way that you know that will attract, some people who believe in that and want to invest some of their life in that.
Yeah.
What do you do if your culture actually sucks? Like, is there a scenario that might come up? Like, I kind of simply mean like that you're not quite ready to tell the world about. Or is there a way to work out if it's ready? Like, okay, or is it always you still believe it's always got to be just brutal authenticity?
Yeah, and I'm going to turn around. I'm going to say, look, Goldman Sachs for me sucks, and I don't want it. But there are plenty of people who do. And there are plenty of people who look at the company I work at and go, I bet that sucks. And for them, they're right. And I disagree because I want what my company wants. Everybody wants something different. And I know it's kind of an old chestnut to kind of bring recruiting back to dating. But in the end, every pot has a lid, right? Your partner is not the most attractive human being who ever walked the face of the earth. And frankly, even if they are, and I know I'm talking to Australians and you all brought us the Helmsworths, and I appreciate that, and thank you very much and all, but I know People Magazine keeps telling us that they're the sexiest human beings that ever walked the face of the earth. And some people love that. And some people don't. I know people who think Benicio del Toro is the hottest guy ever, to which I will go, if you say so, okay. To each their own, right? There's no such thing as a culture that sucks. There's a mismatch. There are companies where they say, if I look at like Reddit's subreddit anti-work, and they're always bringing up, hey, my boss said this. And you're like, I can't believe people still say that. But the truth is that culture may suck, but if you have no other options, that's what you get. So it ends up being an interesting kind of balancing act where you say, okay, if your culture legitimately sucks, people who can choose won't choose you. So consequently, you'll be attracted to people who are just there for the paycheck and nothing more. And well, congratulations. It's a transactional world. That's fine, but you'll never expect to say, how are we going to, go to the moon or Mars or whatever the heck it is, or whatever our big challenge is? How are we going to make $1 bajillion when people are only showing up for the paycheck, when they're going to do the least amount of work? That's a problem, but it's not a problem of hiring. You're just going to attract people who only want the bare minimum.
And do you ever see kind of part of employer brand of being equal parts like, okay, we're going to take this story out to market, but does it ever come into the equation the role takes on a goal to actually make any changes or improvements to things?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Right? Like there are like companies who say things like, so let's say, it's March and it's Women's History Month. It's International Women's Day. It's a lot of women discussions, right? And every company kind of stands up on their particular soapbox, usually called LinkedIn, and says, we care about women. And then you look at them and you go, so, and in America, this is especially harsh. Do you only offer the legally minimum family leave for your company for women who have a baby and they can only take 8 weeks? Guess what? You don't care about women. So there is kind of a friction there. So what you can say is, look, I want you to care about women. I want you to say that you care about women or Black folks or Latinos or gay people. It's pride, right? So let's talk about, LGBTQ people. It's great. I want you to care about those people, but I want you to do it authentically, which means maybe there are some minor changes you have to make internally to make that true. Maybe you have to offer more than the bare legal minimum of family leave or paternity or maternity. Maybe you do have to have a mother's room on site. Maybe there's tiny little policy changes that impact what you're allowed to talk about. And most companies, play the game of coattails and say, oh, well, it's Pride Week, so let's talk about how much we care about LGBTQ. And then, of course, July 1 hits and they pretend gay people don't exist. You're like, oh, well, that was fun. That was exciting. There could have been policies put into place to say, no, we absolutely do not exclude. We absolutely do not, have any bias in that space. We care about the work. We have ERGs. We have all these things. So yeah, employer brand should always have one eye on what the policy is, what the reality is, because there are places to make changes. But, and this is a big but, most employer branders have no power. And maybe we'll get into this, but this idea that employer branding is impacted by what the CEO does, what the CFO does, what the COO does, what product support does, what consumer support does, what the product manager team does, the features, the marketing team, the recruiters. Every part of the company impacts the employer brand, right? If the product you put out is atrocious, it impacts your employer brand. If you call up your customer service and they're horrible and they're just reading from a book, that impacts your employer brand. But if you are in charge of your employer brand, you have no authority to make any changes there. You can't say, we need to fire this customer service. It's horrible. It's impacting our employer brand. You can't do that. You have no power, which is kind of why only crazy people do this job, by the way. Spoiler, it's true. Every employer brander I've ever met is insane. Absolutely just whacked out of their brain insane. Because it's an impossible job. But there are places, opportunities, low-hanging fruit where you can say, look, there's some small changes we can make, and they should be engaged in that.
Okay. Cool. We've got a couple of questions come through here, James. So we've got one from Rachel here. She's said, if executing an EB competitor analysis, where should you start? Looking at direct competition, industry competition, aspirational competitors, or all the above?
So this is a great question. And I'm a big believer in doing audits first. And I know not everybody does that. I think a lot of people just go, they buy some data from some purveyor and say, oh, this is what it's about. This is what candidates want. Let's talk about that. And as the world changes where we're remote friendly and Zoom and all these other tools allow us to work anywhere in the world, we have to first embrace this idea that if you can hire people anywhere in the world, anybody can work anywhere in the world. So that means your competitor set is everybody, right? It's all 50 million businesses in the world, right? Roughly. Obviously, that's impossible to do a competitive audit on. But what I do is I start by saying, where have you hired from and who have you lost people to? Just start there, because they are the people who are clearly calling your folks. They are the people trying to poach your folks. And you need to kind of say, what is the A/B? What is the comparison? How do these two kind of shake out? But for most companies, the competitive set for your, say, legal team and the competitive set for your development team have nothing to do with each other, right? Lawyers can work at almost every company in the universe. Developers mostly work at software companies. They mostly work at fintech. They mostly work at certain other companies. So understanding the micro organization, the micro culture and the micro space of each team, to understand that if you're trying to desperately to hire more lawyers, are you hiring them from hospitals? Are you hiring them from government? Are you hiring them from private practice? Are you hiring them straight out of school? Are you hiring them where? You could hire them from almost anywhere. So who are your competitors there? But other teams, it might be all about, look, we hire most of our salespeople from these 4 companies. There's your competitive set. Don't be aspirational. You can't fly until you learn how to walk. So start by saying very simply, what do they offer? What do we offer? And when I say offer, that's usually a misnomer. Usually, oh, they have better benefits than we do. Oh, we're in trouble. No. Remember, what you offer is desirable to someone. The question is, if let's say you're and I like to, Facebook's in the news. Let's say you think you're competing against Facebook. Now, Facebook, I don't know, I think they print money. I think they just own a printing press and they just churn out cash, and every week they give these kind of cartoon sacks of gold, to people. So here's your paycheck. Like, they have so much money, and nobody can compete with them on a salary level. So don't. So what can you compete with them against? Can you say, well, let's say you're Facebook and let's say you're destroying democracy as we know it. Oh, that might be a problem. Okay, maybe you can say your business isn't destroying democracy, for example. Just a thought, just throwing it out there, spitballing, don't mind me. You offer something that they don't, right? If I say, James, you're a 6'1" and a little chubby, and let's be fair, not young anymore. You are going to play a game against LeBron James. You know what I'm not going to do? Pick basketball. I'm going to pick anything else. I don't care if it's chess. I don't care if it's speed reading. I don't care if it's just how well you can skip across the street. I am not going to try and compete against him in basketball because I know I will lose. So when you're looking at your competitive set, understand that you're not trying to beat them at everything. You're trying to beat them at one thing. And then you turn the volume up on that one thing as loud as possible, right? There's a company called Boston Dynamics. They make all those creepy robots that make us look like we're terrified of, it's a Terminator all over again. They only have like a couple hundred people who work there. Teeny company up until, they got bought by Hyundai, I think, right? Or acquired or something. I can't remember. But if you're in the robotics space, there's Boston Dynamics, and there's this weird gap, and there's like Toyota and people who make cars, and then there's like everybody else. You don't have to be the biggest to make a huge splash. You don't have to be the most sexy company in the world to be desirable. You just have to be different enough from the next company who does that thing. And that's in robotics. What do you offer, and how do you say who else offers that thing, and where are we competing, right? That's really what it's about. So don't worry about aspirational. You'll get to that eventually. Start with who are we losing people to? Why are we losing people? Should we compete at that level? Should we be, if I'm losing people at Facebook, should I compete on a salary level? Spoiler, don't. Find something else to compete against, and then look at that relative to your rest of your competition set.
Mm-hmm. Yep, cool, love it. We've got a couple more questions there. We might hold those and jump into the second topic.
Yeah, cool. So James, you're really active on LinkedIn, which is amazing. You post a lot of really valuable content all the time.
I'm a loudmouth. That's very nice of you to say. That's the nicest way for you to say that. Thank you.
So a couple of weeks ago, you shared something, which I'm actually going to read, which was around.
I was drunk. I never met that person.
People were asking you if they're kicking off their employer branding role, like what is a step-by-step process that they could follow? And you said 1, build relationships, 2, get a quick win, 3, tell stories, and 4, incept the brand. So can you explain what you mean by incept the brand, why it's step number 4, and perhaps like what the connection is between telling stories and incepting the brand? Is Leonardo DiCaprio involved in the inception?
It might be. Yeah, it might be. I feel that. Yeah.
Right, let's go with that.
It is helpful to have seen that movie because it is a fantastic movie, and there's pieces of it that's very particularly interesting. It's this idea of I can't make you think of a thing. If I say think of a polar bear, you're not going to go polar bear. Where did that come from? You're not going to pretend it came out of your brain. It clearly came out of my mouth. But how do I get you to think a certain thing about a company without saying that thing is true? So how do I surround you with this idea so that you absorb it and it starts popping out of your mouth and you don't know where it came from? You just make it feels to you like you just naturally, organically thought it. That's where you want to be. So it has to be last. So it starts up by building those relationships. You have to meet people. Like I said, employer brand touches every aspect of the business. You might even say that every part of the business is employer brand. It's a valid claim. Good luck getting that paycheck. But there it is. And you need to kind of build those relationships because you need to get involved with what marketing is doing, what recruiting is doing, and what all the parts of the business are doing, what leadership's doing, the vision of the company, where it's heading, all that stuff. Get them to see that you are building a brand that is connected and part of the larger brand, right? You're not making some rogue brand over there. You're building something connected to something bigger. But in that process, find a quick win. And the nice thing is most companies have lots of low-hanging fruit, whether it's rewriting the job posting or just mapping the hiring process, like the internal nuts and bolts of, okay, who sends this email and then what happens? It really kind of go A to Z of the whole process, right? There's a lot of quick wins. And the more you get quick wins, the more people go, oh, seems reasonable. I want to talk to this person. So you get more meetings and you build more relationships. It becomes this kind of flywheel where it starts to spin harder and harder. Then you start to tell stories based on these relationships you're having, which you can only get by getting the quick wins. So as you start to tell these stories, you'll find this thing. And I think most people do it. I don't know that everybody kind of like puts their finger on exactly what's happening. As you're engaging with companies and you're building these relationships, in your head, you're going, the brand is kind of about innovation or culture or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not important. And you might think, okay, if I had $100,000, I can involve an agency to come and do an official EVP project. We can land an EVP, and that's fine if you want to do that, but you don't have to. If you kind of think it's mostly about innovation or status or whatever that thing is, and you kind of put a little circle around that in your mind, and every time you talk to somebody, you ask a question about it, and you hear more about it, it reinforces this idea. It's about innovation, it's about status, whatever it is. Then you start to tell people stories. But you don't just randomly tell stories. You don't say, tell me about your life starting with the moment you were born and how'd you end up here. You don't do that. You cherry pick. You make decisions, right? Telling stories is all about deciding what to show and what to reveal. So you ask questions about, well, gosh, you could ask questions about anything, but wouldn't it be good if you would ask questions about innovation and status? And the more you ask those questions and you start to put them out in the world, the more candidates and more importantly, other parts of the business watch your stories. Let's say making videos, and you have these little 2-minute videos about why people like to work here and what they got out of this and how they do these things. And the same words keep coming up over and over again. Now, you're not putting it in their mouths, but you're leading them there. You're asking them questions about innovation and status or whatever, right? You're kind of getting them to where you want them to be. And you publish them, and you push them out, and you put them in the Slack, and you put them in the email, and you put them in, hey, everybody, it's an all-hands meeting. You should take a look at our wonderful library of stories from your own staff. Aren't these wonderful? And people look at them, and they go, oh, wow, everybody's talking about innovation and status. I guess that's, that's why I work here, for innovation and status. And you see what I just did? I just surrounded you with a story and made you think that the idea of working here about innovation and status is from your head. And that's where the inception happens. The value of all that is, play that out 6-12 months later, when you walk into the CEO's office and say, I think the employer brand is innovation and status. They go, yep, that sounds right. Because you told them their own story in a way that was, packaged well. And they go, yeah. And they kept seeing it and seeing it and seeing it. It felt like, well, it's social proof. It must be true. It must be true. Everybody else around me says it. Everyone else believes this thing. Yeah, I guess it must be true. So I guess I believe it too. And you're there. And suddenly you don't need to spend however much money to get an agency to come in and build your brand, because you told them the brand by telling them the brand. Does that make sense? I know it's a little crazy and a little weird. It feels like a magic trick half the time, but I swear I've done it multiple times, and I know other people do it. They just don't call it that.
No, it makes perfect sense. I feel like you just closed the loop as well, because ultimately telling those stories and sharing it and accepting the brand leads you back to building more relationships, and the whole thing just, it's a circular motion.
It is a virtuous cycle.
Cool. Can we talk quickly just about, I guess, career sites in this context, the storytelling-esque that we're kind of going down? Typically, we don't see many stories on career sites. Why do you think this is? And I guess, just to take a step back, what do you think the ultimate goal of a career site actually is, and where stories might play into it?
So to me, the platonic ideal of a career site looks a lot like a real estate site. Like if you go buy a house or buy an apartment, you just don't go, oh, that's cute, buy, right? That doesn't happen, right? That's the beginning of a very long journey that involves lawyers, right? And we don't want to avoid the lawyers, but for this part, it's a journey. It's this idea of, that's an interesting company. I want to learn more. I want to read, I want to see the layout of the business or layout of the building, and I want to know how much tax they paid, and what was the electricity cost, and when was it built, and when was the last time it had a lawsuit against it, and get all this data. Like, you look at a real estate page, they're huge, they're massive, they're giving you every piece of data they can throw at you, and they're not scared. They're not saying, oh, this building was built in 18 something something something. Oh, no one will want that. No. Someone wants a really old building. Someone always wants a really old building. Someone always wants a really new building, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, this is what it is. Career sites should be the same. But you can't just say, this is the company. Here's all these facts. This is why you should work here. Because the legal team and the sales team, they barely look like they work in the same business, right? The level of risk in a sales team and the level of risk averseness in a legal team, completely different. The cultures are different. The rewards are different. The people are different. All that stuff is different. So you can't do it for the company. What you really want to do it is for the job or the team, at least at the team. And you want to say, this is what we reward, right? If we reward risk and risk taking on the sales side, we reward collective thinking on the legal side. This is what we reward. This is what we care about. And now you start to add stories about the legal team or about the sales team to bolster that out. Ultimately, if the goal is to get people to choose you, you have to give them enough information to make the choice. And most people are so terrified of saying something wrong, right? They've been brainwashed by 40, 60, 80 years of recruiting that says, oh, I need 400 people to apply for my job before, that's a successful job posting. 400 people applied. To which I want to talk to every recruiter and say, you like looking for 399 job postings you can throw out? I mean, what business says, I'm going to make 399 people unhappy for every person I make happy? How long does that business last, right? That's a recipe for disaster. The goal is to say, this is what the business is, this is who will like it, and have that person go, me, I want that. That's all you want. And you have to do that by being specific. So the reason we don't tell enough stories is because there's no story that is broad enough to mean anything. And so consequently, we don't tell any stories. So I'm a big believer in what I refer to as making these people-shaped holes in the logo or in the brand, right? If you're working for Facebook, you don't see a big F and go, oh, Fs, right? It doesn't work that way. What you do is you meet Bob and you go, wow, Bob is smart. Bob sounds like me. Bob cares about the same stuff I care about. Bob looks and acts and thinks and sounds like me. I want to learn more about Bob, which means I want to learn about more Facebook. So it means having very granular stories and being willing to say, I'm not telling one big story because that's impossible, right? How many movies are there? How many TV shows are there? There's no one movie. You have a favorite, but it's not indicative of every movie that ever was. So how do you tell these very, very granular stories that appeal to a very specific person? Because that's all you really want. You don't want 1 million people to apply. That's a horrible idea and stuff. We've been brainwashed into thinking that, well, gosh, if I need needles, I need bigger haystacks, but that's not how needles get made. That's not how that works. So stop kind of thinking about how do we attract the most candidates and say, how do you attract, honestly, it's 2 candidates, the one you hire and the one you say, yeah, you were amazing, but blah, 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 blah. That's all you want. Everything after that is literally wasted energy. And so if you focus on how do I attract just the right people and not the most people, then you say, okay, if I know the kind of person I'm attracting, I bet I can guess what story they care about. I bet I can understand what information they want. Not because I understand what everybody wants, but because I want to understand what that person wants. And that's when the game gets played.
Cool. Just one final shout out for questions on the chat before we move on to kind of the kind of final stages of the chat. One question I've got that I want to ask you there in response to that, James, was just around is part of that problem, right? Because a lot of the stuff you've talked about is trying to gather and understand and communicate the intangibles that naturally come out of the people already working there, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, is part of the problem kind of confusion about when is it the right time to promote the tangibles about a specific role versus the intangibles where the magic is that you've been talking about?
Well, here's the dirty secret. There's only one tangible. Of all the things you learn about a company, there's only one thing that's really real, and that's the salary. Everything else is completely subjective. We're a very collaborative culture. What does that mean? We're very innovative. I don't get that. Your office is going to be somewhere over there. Where? What's my, right? Everything is intangible. Everything is subjective. There's only one thing that matters, and that's the salary. Now, the problem is it's really hard to tell the story of an intangible. It's very hard to kind of spell out a subjective value. If you want to talk about, we care about our people, you can list perks. That's a way of kind of bolstering, but perks isn't the same as caring, right? It's still a disconnect. But by listing perks, it goes a long way to say, yeah, this is indicative of how much we do care, right? There are companies that, I remember companies that would have, they'd have a gym in the building, and they would have a laundry service for your gym clothes. You just stitch your name in your shorts, your t-shirt, and they would wash it and hand it back to you clean and ready to go for the next day. Now, that could say a couple of things. That could say how much they care about exercise, or it could say how much they care about their people, that say, don't worry about it, we'll take care of you, right? It's very hard to prove that subjective value. So you have to kind of work 10 times harder at saying we care, or we're innovative, or whatever that thing is you're trying to say is. And recruiters and hiring managers don't get the difference between those subjective values and those objective values. They say, oh, here's the salary, and we're very innovative. Like, no, you got to prove this 10 more times before they have anywhere near equating that value. And it's really hard to make those things true. So that's really what the problem is. So consequently, most businesses will head nod towards the subjective values, but then go, it's all about salary. Oh, we can't hire anybody? We need to increase the salary. It's always about the one thing that's tangible. because it's the one thing where if you say it and you put it in a legal document saying this is your new salary and this is the offer letter, and you violate it, you get to get sued. Congratulations, right? Everything else is bullshit. Everything else is just marketing spin. Oh yeah, we said innovative and we mean that. What we mean is your computer is from 1942. That's very innovative for 1939. What does that mean? What does it mean? All that stuff is just spin. So that's really what that's about. You have to do 10 times as much work to prove an intangible or a subjective value as a tangible one.
Yeah, totally. Okay, couple more questions from the chat here that are a little bit, kind of more broad topics, but we'll jump into those, and I think we've got one final segment for you. So one is from Sarah Thompson. As a recruiter who is extremely interested in having an active role in EB, but no marketing degree and a company with a dedicated brand team, how can I initiate that conversation to have some ownership in the role of employer branding at my org?
That's a great question. And I'm going to out myself by saying I have a poli-sci degree. I have everything I know about marketing is self-taught. It's reading a stack of books and asking dumb questions and looking a little silly for a while before you go, oh, this is what that means. Oh, I get that. This is how it all connects. So don't let a lack of a degree stop you, because let's be fair, there is no employer brand degree. Just go. Now that said, most businesses have kind of a maturity model of how their employer brand function grows. And it starts with zero, having no employer brand whatsoever, which it sounds like, Sarah, that's where you are. The step above that is a pilot project. And it could be anything. It could be Glassdoor. It could be job postings. It could be rewriting the front page of your career site. It doesn't matter. The trick is you have to say, look, employer brand is a big idea, but it's impossible to prove a big idea. What you can do is do something super tangible, super tactical, super simple, super direct, and say, if we do this thing well, this will happen. And you have to kind of make that statement super clear. You have to put it in a deck and you have to hand it to somebody who's got a VP in their title or something. I don't know. You just have to say it because you're going to go do it. Now, yes, you'll end up working 2 hours a week or a day, extra to kind of make this thing happen. No one's going to give you free time to make it happen. It's all kind of side hustle stuff. But when you do it and it does what you said it was going to do, then you go to your boss and say, told you so. I told you so. I told you this is so. And they say, wow, that was really cool. That didn't cost us any money at all. We've been thinking about employer brand because Harvard Business Review says we should talk about it and think about it, but we didn't know where to start. But you did. That's pretty cool. What would you do with $10,000? And so it begins, right? It's about slowly ramping this up. So you start with a pilot project. And it does not matter what the pilot project is, so long as it has a tangible value that you can point to, and it's easier if it's free. Trust me, that's just how businesses are. Once you get them to go, oh, that's cool, then you say, how do we make this real? And that is, how do you get your job, not recruiting, but full-time employer brand, which means asking dumb questions and stepping on your own toes and falling on your face a couple times, whatever, don't worry about it. But just say, this is the idea, you call it a brand position. This is what story we want to tell the world about our business, about what we offer, and then build tactics around it. And that sounds really cool, except it's really boring. It means if you care about innovation, say it in every job posting, say it in the career site, say it on LinkedIn, say it on Facebook, say it on a banner, say it on the thing. Just never stop saying the thing, right? By the way, that's 98% of marketing is just say the thing again, right? You just keep saying it till someone goes, oh, okay. That's the third step, is solidifying the function. The fourth step is expanding the function. Okay, bring in a writer, bring in a videographer, bring in somebody to help you build a team to manage it. Maybe it's a recruitment marketer. Whatever it is, get some help and expand your thinking. The final step is when you live in the brand team, side by side with the marketing team, and they don't look at you like you're sock stick, right? They go, you are a partner, you are engaged with us, we have a shared sense of what the brand is. You look through the brand to look at our candidates and our people, and we look through the brand to think about our customers, and it's the same brand. And that is like where everybody wants to be, where there's a single brand. Now that journey took me 7 minutes to explain. Thank you, Sarah. And yet it takes a decade to go through, for real. Like most people stop at 3 or 4. Like there are plenty of people who do great work who are just stuck at 4, and it's just because their marketing team hasn't kind of looped them in. Their investor relations haven't looped them in and treated it like one brand. It's really hard to get to that 5th stage, but that's where you want to go. But that is the progression of how this works. Start with a pilot, prove it, support it, grow it, perfect it.
Mm-hmm. And then somewhere along the way, you can convince the VP that it was their idea in the first place, and step that in.
Yeah, but chances are at that point you're gonna get a better job someplace else with a 50% pay bump, and it's fine, whatever.
Cool. All right, we might jump into the final section.
Yep. Before we just close up, James, let's have one more question, which I think might be an interesting one. What are your top 2 favorite employer branding examples?
Okay. 2 is a good number because I have very different favorites, and I like them for very different reasons. The first is Delta, though frankly, most airlines are really, really good at this. And I point out because I actually know the person who used to run the Delta employer brand. And I like it because it is achieving that sense of there's one brand. Like you walk onto a plane and you see like an ad on the jetway as you're walking on the plane, you're like, that ad could be for internal staff. It could be for employer brand. It could be for consumer marketing. It could be for investor marketing. It could be for a lot of things. And the chances are it's really just one ad, but it's serving all of those audiences because it has a single core sense of what that brand is. And they just state it, right? Everything is through a single brand. Now, there's some pluses and minuses to this. It means that by having an employer brand that's really glued next to what consumer brand is doing, you can't go off and do crazy things as much as you'd like to sometimes. But it means that you work side by side with some of the best consumer marketers on the planet, right? They have more budget than you can, they have more zeros on their budget than you've ever seen in your life, right? They go, you have commercials on TV? Wow. And you've never seen that much money in your life, right? But you get to play along with them. And the more you establish what your brand is about and how it supports them, because it does. Because the thing we don't say enough is the employer brand is the most human part of any company's brand. It's the most human part. And what happens is when companies are so over-focused on their product or they're over-focused on their service and something bad happens, I don't know, maybe you're accused of destroying democracy. Maybe your CEO is a racist. Maybe, I don't know, you're making accounts where you shouldn't be making accounts for your customers that they never heard of. And you go, oh, we're so sorry. The next step in a PR crisis management campaign is to say, but meet our managers who are managing your local establishment, who are making your pizza, who are managing those banks. It's the people, the human side that makes people go, well, I could be angry at Papa John's Pizza, but that person makes my pizza and they seem cool. I can't be racist. And you completely are okay with it, right? How you manage crisis these days is through employer branding. So there's that. The other brand I like is Spotify, just because they get it, right? It is and I know like everybody loves them and there's a reason for that. It's they have this metaphor that we're a band and everything is about music because they're Spotify and that's what they do. So it's always about you're part of a band. They take that metaphor and they stretch it far beyond the bounds of any kind of reasonableness. Every part of their communication, whether it's marketing or their internal comms, even the offer letters reference bands, right? It's all about that metaphor of bands. And they wrap it in some really pretty creative, but it's all about this. This is a single idea, and we have gone all in, and that's what we're all about. And I love that. I just love that.
Awesome. Great examples. All right, James. So we like to wrap up each of these sessions, giving the guests the opportunity to ask a question for the next guest. So in our last episode that we had a month ago with Michael Christmas, Michael's question was around how can we tap into the gig economy moving forward? Tackle that as you wish.
That's interesting. So I think there's a lot of macro trends. There's obvious macro trends, right? Everybody knows about DoorDash and Uber and all this gig economy stuff that you can kind of just work as a task, right? You can just say, I've decided to give up my day job and I'm going to do task-based work. And for the most part, it's been around hiring a car, somebody put my IKEA together, bring me my pizza, right? Very simple, commoditized tasks, right? There's no magic that goes into making the IKEA. There's no magic that goes into bringing a pizza, right? Anybody can kind of do it. You follow the instructions. What you're starting to see, though, is that jobs themselves are becoming task and skill focused. So think about the job description at the job you have right now. And that was written about 6 months before you started. Now, in the 6 months between when they wrote that and when you started, things changed. Technology changed, the world changed, things just changed, right? There's new skills, new demands on that job. So that job posting or that job description is garbage. And then for the ensuing year, 2, 5 years, your job keeps changing. And that's so different from what they hired you for. And that's only ramping up. It's only getting faster. It's not about here is a set of skills we call a job, so let's hire a job. What you're starting to see is let's break those skills apart and say, I need someone who does research. I need someone who does writing. I need someone who does video work. I need someone who does whatever. And if you put them together, some places call that employer brander. Some places call it a content marketer. Some places call that creative. Or they're just a set of skills that you can break apart. Now, if that's true, and I think it's a trend you're going to see more of, well, employer brand doesn't matter in a commoditized market, except nobody wants to be a commodity, right? You want to be a DoorDash. No one says, when I grow up, I'm going to deliver pizzas in my car for a living. No one has ever said that in their life, right? 16-year-olds don't say that, right? And they're pretty dumb most of the time. And even they didn't say it. No one wants to do those jobs. So what you have to do is say, if you want to attract people to that job where they're ordering a pizza, you have to give them something else, that thing on top of the task and service skill kind of model, and say, it's in service of saving the world, saving for college. It's this thing. The reason why the people join the Army is because they want to be tested and they want to serve and they want to save money to go to college. Maybe that's an American thing. I'm not sure how it works in the rest of the world. But no one says, I can't wait to get shot at. I can't wait to carry a 50-pound pack on a beach for 5 years. That sounds fantastic. No, they care about serving, testing, eventually growing skill sets by getting paid to go to college. So the employer brand is the thing you add on top to say, this is what the job is really about. It's not the paycheck, it's not the skill, it's not the task, it's the thing it's in service of. It's the value proposition. And yeah, it's a gig economy, but that doesn't mean the value proposition isn't important. It's even more important because if you can deliver for Uber, you can deliver for DoorDash, and you can deliver for any number of these other food delivery places, right? It's the same job. So how do you pick? And that's where employer brand is really going to do some heavy lifting.
Or you just do all three at once, right? You don't pick one, you just sign up to all the apps.
Yeah. That'll be the next big service.
Awesome, David. And then the final question is a question for you to ask. A question.
Okay, and obviously, do I get to know who it's going to be sent to?
No.
Okay. My question is, what is your favorite free or super cheap, or like what I would refer to as couch cushion money tactic, right? You don't need, I'm a big believer, you don't need a big budget to do employer branding. You just need to think it through a little bit. But what everybody has like a series of, oh, this is a good one. It's a cheap one. They've never seen this before. It's easy. Let's just knock it out. What's your favorite free or cheap tactic you can drop on us?
Yeah. So in Australia, we call that tight ass. What's your tight ass tactic?
We say that here too, but yeah.
Awesome. Great question, James. We're actually put up the final slide poll. Thank you so much for your time today, your afternoon, our morning. It was a great session. I'm sure we got a lot out of it. I'm sure everyone who joined us today did too. Paul's going to put up a slide with just a QR code. If anyone would like the recording, if anyone has any suggested guests for the rest of the season, please send them through. And we'll also, I'm sure many of you already follow James on LinkedIn, but we'll just drop his LinkedIn as well in the chat. And also the winner of the brand kit today, I'm going to go ahead and make an executive decision, and it's going to go to Sarah Thompson.
Yay.
Thank you. That's a great question, Sarah. Thank you. You get jelly beans.
Awesome. Yay. Oh yeah, there's jelly beans in the packs too.
Yeah, there's somebody responding there.
So we will we'll get in touch and we'll send that out to you really soon. Yay, she wrote. Cool.
You should be very happy that I didn't say, and there's $100 bill in there.
Yeah. Oh, we better put that in too.
Next time, Sarah. Talk to me later, Sarah. We'll plan something.
Yeah. Thanks so much, James. We'll we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Ciao.